got to take loose. I've already taken them loose here. And if you've never messed with these plugs, they're pretty nice actually. They just flip over clip. If you just push a clip in, then you can push that piece back and it will unplug itself. After you do that, you'll be able to slide this back enough. There's a couple more plugs back here for your seat heaters if you have them in your DSC control, and unplug that. After you do that, we can get this whole thing out of here. That's the only thing left holding it in. So we're going to do that next and move on. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is remove the back seat. Now the back seat, you just lift on the front of it. You might have to try 2 or 3 times, but it's just got like these, it just spring clips in there. And you lift that up and that'll come out of the way. And then if you look down on the edge next to the door, there's 2 bolts, one on each side. You take those loose and the back will lift up. And you just work it off the belts and get the back out of there. So we're going to go ahead and remove the rear seat and move on. Okay, I forgot to mention you got to remove the rear headrest in the seat in the rear before the seat will come out. So you just yank up on all 3 of them and they'll come out. So now we're going to work up on the dash and the trim a little bit. These things cover over your, like so. They just pop out, and if you just, firmly grab hold of them, like a hand here and a hand here, and yank up, they'll pop out. Sometimes they do crack a little bit. Sometimes these clips break. You probably have to go to BMW unless you can find them on the internet. A lot of these clips, like the door clips and stuff like that, I just look around on the internet. I'll buy them, 100 at a time. That way I know I got them. Stick them in the garage. And then you take this thing, these side pieces, same way. They just have 2 clips in the bottom. See, this one broke off. This one stayed in. This one broke off. But anyway, they just pop out. You pop those off. And the back one's the same way. It's got this plastic piece here. So we're going to take all these plastic pieces off. We're going to take these side pieces off. And then we're going to take the screw out of our hood release. Just got one single screw in the middle. So we're going to do that next. And then we'll move on to what's next. Okay, so I took my hood release handle off. Next thing we got to do is we got to take out this bottom thing. There's 2 half-turn things here, and then there's 3 screws up there in the bottom. Take loose, and while you're down here, there's 1 screw in the bottom dash cover. Now, I got a video on how to replace a hood cable, and people do it wrong, and they force this piece out, and they always end up breaking the clips. My new one's broke, but anyway, it'll go back in there. It's just, I'll show you what I mean as we go, but you can't get this out without taking this cover off and without loosening the dash a little bit. And that's the only way you have to get inside here to change your hood release cable. So I'm going to show you that as I go through it too. But anyway, take all those screws out, take this bottom cover off, and you have your door chime is back here. You have to unplug your door chime. Do that and we'll move on. Okay, so next thing we got to do is pop your wood grain off. There's a couple screws here you take loose, and there's a screw over here, and then up in the bottom of your steering column there's a screw. There's a little hole. You'll see the whole hole right there. Take that out. And then right here on the outside you'll see this little plug. Well, you pop that plug out and there's a screw there. So we're going to take all those screws out and our bottom dash cover should be loose. Okay, so the bottom dash piece is out. Now there are some like clips, kind of clips in there, this black piece. Just pull down a little bit, the whole thing will pop right off. And that's done. And what I meant about this was, as you can see, this has got like a rubber stopper here and it's got these clips here. And if you don't take this stuff loose up top, you can't move this out. And people always try to force it thinking they can just take this off, and they break the clips off of it and break it in the bottom. But as you can see here, you can plainly see your hood release, and there's one screw here. That's how you change your hood cable. But anyway, you know, you got your hood trunk release plug. Take that loose, pull this plastic piece out, and then we'll move on to what we have next. Okay, for the next thing, you definitely want to unhook your battery. By now, we're going to be messing around airbags and things like that. So you definitely want to unhook your battery. One clue, unless you have software to reset your airbags, you can't reset them with over-the-counter any type of resetters. You have to use BMW stuff to do it. Do not turn on your ignition with any airbag unplugged. You know, if you're going to turn on your ignition even to test something or do something like this, like in your door window, make sure you stick the airbag back on the door and plug it in before you turn the ignition on. If you turn the ignition on without the airbag plugged in, it'll throw a code, and you have to get BMW software to reset it. So if you look underneath the dash, there's a bar here with 2 screws in it, 2 nuts on it. We take those 2 nuts off, and the whole open up your glove box, and that whole thing will pull off. Next thing we want to do is what I mean about a plastic tool. You know, doesn't tear anything up. But you take your airbag cover off, and you can see your passenger side airbag. It's got like 4 nuts down in there. Take the 4 nuts off. Take the airbag out, and go ahead and pop this cover off here, your wood trim. Okay, and you'll see screws along here. Take all these screws out, and you got one more over here on the side where you're same like you had on the other side. So we're going to take all that loose and take the airbag out, and we'll move on to the rest of it. So once you open up your glove box, I should have kind of mentioned this before, there's 2 little clips that go on your strap there, and there's one on the other side too that you need to pop off that hold the hinge. And you see with the airbag out, there's this little bar in here, and this whole cover just comes right off. So go ahead and get your glove box out of the way. Once you pop those straps off, it'll come out. And then the next thing we got to do is remove the radio. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so you just pull the knob straight off and take the smallest like Allen key you can get and stick it in the hole right down here underneath. And you got to kind of wiggle it around, but you can stick your fingers up here and put some pressure pushing back on it. And what it does is it releases this lock mechanism here. Okay, so then it'll pull out, and you unplug that. And there's one more screw up here, so we're going to get that all unplugged and see what we got left. Okay, so with the dash loose, we got to get the cassette player out. And if you look up, there's 2 like brass bars sticking out. Right next to it, there's 2 little holes. They're number 10 Torx. And so you take a number 10 Torx, unscrew those, and sometimes it takes a little bit of wiggling and pushing from the back. That's why I kind of let it loose first. And get that loose. And then there's a couple plugs in the back here. You take those loose. So we're going to go ahead and move on and get that cassette player out. So next we're going to get the dash out of here. So what we got to do is there's 3 screws right up in here. They're small Torx. Take those loose, and this black plastic cover will come loose. And you got to unplug your headlight switch and your fog light switch. And then there'll be a couple screws holding your speedometer, your cluster. So take those Torx out and unplug your cluster and get that stuff out of there. Then there's 2 bolts, one on each side here, and that should relieve our dash. So we're going to go ahead and do that next, and then we'll keep moving. Okay, with those bolts out, next thing we got to do is remove our side pillar mount. Now they got these little things stuck in there, and there's just one Torx, and then as you can see it's like slides down in there, so you just pull it out from the top and wiggle it around and you can get it out. Just a note, you know, these if it's not loose, there is probably a screw holding something, but look around, you know, there's little screws and stuff everywhere, but that leaves our dash loose, as you can see. Now it takes some finagling and all to get it out. And there's also a couple plugs in the back of your air vent here that you have to take loose, and there's a blue cable right here that goes to your air vent that you have to take loose at some point, either back here at your heater or at your vents here. These vents will pop out if you find that easier. Anyway, like I say, you know, if all that's loose, everything's loose, you can tell if it's loose. If it's not moving, there's a screw somewhere. So we're going to go ahead and wiggle the dash out of here, you know, and just make sure you're not caught on any of your wires and ripping your wires. Your wires are all inside somewhere and what have you like that. So anyway, that's what we're going to do next.